Hi Andrea, welcome. Can you please introduce yourself?
I'm an artist from Connecticut and spent some time in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
So can you tell me, I've seen your work and I've seen your work all over the world. So can you tell me what makes your work so special?
Well, I guess it's unique to me, and my thoughts and what I'm putting into it are, I don't know, it's hard to say what makes it special. It's unique to me.
So what is unique to you? When you first start being an artist, like when you, how that type of work came up to you? I mean, how did you get the idea to make that certain kind of art?
Well, I love to play with materials, and I just enjoy the process of having a visual, a joy, a thought, a feeling, and figuring out what materials will create that visual. And so it's just a lot of playtime in terms of playing with materials, see if it approximates this feeling or this intention. A lot of exploration in how things work. I like trial and error, and then sometimes I call my pieces a series of mistakes till I like what I see. So it goes through just all sorts of iterations till it feels like what I'm trying to express. And normally what I'm trying to express is some sort of positive vibration about nature and humanity.
So we were just talking today, everybody remembers first person that we kissed. So do you remember, it's like something special, something first time that we remember. But do you remember what was your first creation that you make in art? Or maybe first piece that someone bought?
Well, that I can kiss and tell. I did a night sky in Taos, New Mexico. And I made a very textured oil painting that went from dark to light, and sparkles of gold leaf to give the sense of light flashing in the nighttime, kind of looking down into the city, a mountain view.
And do you remember who bought that piece?
A friend of mine, and I wasn't really intending to sell my work. I was just intending to create for the sake of creation, but they bought my first painting and were thrilled with it, and they told two friends and they told two friends, and I was selling a lot of my early work.
And how did you feel at that moment? Or was it like, did you feel, okay, this means that I'm really an artist? Or did it make you feel really proud?
I mean, I'm practical in the sense that I understand making a sale you can reinvest back in your art and create new things. But yes, I understood that was an important process, having somebody engaged in something that they would invest in. And that to me was very exciting. But I created for the sake of creating, not to sell.
Mm-hmm. But was it hard to sell? Because I know some artists, they told me they have a hard time giving up on their art, even if they need money to invest back in their art, but they have a hard time giving up. How was that for you?
I don't have a hard time selling. Well, I need probably 30 houses to, house everything that I've created. So I'm thrilled that somebody else wants to store it for me. But for me, it lives on indefinitely. And if it brings somebody joy, then it's an art piece I'm very happy to partner with.
So when you create because you like it, but you're also creating for other people, right? Is that how the
I
process?
love that
You
people
really
collect
process
it.
going. So tell me, how did you get into the art? Did you finish university for that? I mean, I know the answer, but let's tell the people who are listening to us.
Self-taught artist, and I was a child and family therapist and ended up working in a lot of administrative positions for nonprofits, but all the while wanted to be an artist, but never wanted to be a starving artist or make art under pressure, just because I wanted to make art for art's sake, not to live by and have to worry that it was a compromise process. So I taught myself pretty much everything by reading, watching YouTube, I went to one class, I found it horribly uninspiring, and just spending hour after hour in the studio.
So you're telling me when we met in Boys and Girls Club, when I was volunteering and you were working, at that moment you knew you want to be an artist, but you just thought you won't be that good, so you can make a living out of that, or you didn't tell yourself?
It wasn't really quality, it was just, I always wanted to be an artist, always, but I never even talked about it because it didn't seem like something to share with people unless I was really invested full time in it. But I've always, I rented studio space to make ceramics, but just kind of for fun. It wasn't
like a hobby.
Yeah, because I had to go to work, and so it was definitely more part-time hobby activity.
So what made you switch from one profession to full-time artist? From hobby to full-time profession?
When I had children, I did not make enough money to pay for a nanny, so I was a stay-at-home mom. Not that I wanted a nanny, I was ecstatic to be a stay-at-home mother, but there were still hours in the day left that I could concentrate on being an artist, and it seemed like if I was going to change my life and not go back to the nonprofit world, then I could focus full-time on art in addition to raising my children. So I would, work time and a half and did nothing else and read books incessantly for 10 years before I really felt like I was accomplished in a way that I was looking to be.
So for 10 years you were working, creating art, but you didn't go publicly, right?
Well, people kept buying my work early on, so it helped to keep inspired and recreate and invest money back in equipment. And I built a big 2-story barn to show my artwork in the way that I like to show it. So I was always reinvesting back in materials and process and whenever I would sell something. So yeah, I had success early on, but it was, for me, it took 10 years to really get to where I felt like I had accomplished what I had set out to accomplish. Because
it took you 10 years to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish, what made you continue working on your art? Was it like a point in those 10 years that you said, you know what, I'm not really good enough, I'm gonna just leave this to be as a hobby? I would never, or did you have those moments? Or you always felt, I'm just in a process, making myself successful artist by my standards, so I'm patient with myself?
Yeah.
How that
I think I have high standards for myself, but I keep achieving goals that I set for myself, and each step of the way builds confidence, but I've always felt like I have a natural inclination to create things. Like, if, in my head, I think I could create this painting and have it look this way, and it happens because I learned the steps to make it happen, and I technically create a scenario that I know that the outcome's going to approximate the vision, and I have a vision that I believe is valid, interesting, valid.
What is your favorite materials that you worked with so far?
Probably the most involved has been with encaustics, which is melted beeswax. I love that it's a natural material. It's so dynamic. There's so much that happens by chance. So there's a lot of experimentation, and it just takes you into a real process in and of itself. You can manipulate it, has amazing range, and the way light passes through it is very interesting to me, and the texture and the feeling of wax. It's just how like you enjoy playing with a candle, and it feels good, it looks good, and wax is just a beautiful material.
So when you first time started working with the wax, you envisioned certain painting, and then how did you know about that material? Before I saw it in the gallery. I saw it in the gallery, and you liked it.
And it was, and it still is not as well understood or seen often. But when I saw it, I thought there is nothing like this. It's an extraordinary. I started painting in oils because it was the most respected medium in my mind and through history. But encaustics actually, or fusing in wax, is what that means, predates oil, and it's the most timeless medium. It's used to what's the word I'm looking for, with boats, to seal and protect. It's a natural antibiotic. It's the wax is just this extraordinary material in and of itself. What you can do with wax and honey, and just the process that bees make, and what is happening to bees. And I love the whole back history of how wax is created, and then what you can do with it, and how it looks in person, and things layered, and the transfer of light, and how it smells. It's just a beautiful medium. But there was lots of things I like to work with too.
So you're really good with images of living beings in the ocean, from florals to fish to nature. And I've seen your work, it's so beautiful. So you last year was showing us that you start printing that on the silk, right?
Right. Well, I've been silk to me, like encaustics, it picks up light, it has a beautiful reflection, and it just seemed that the underwater floral photography would work well with that. So for me, all these mediums play to perception and light and texture, and they all intermix.
But how did you came up first with the idea to take pictures under the water? Because I saw silhouettes of the women, that you take, and looks absolutely unbelievable. So how that idea came up in your mind?
I said to a friend, do you want to have your daughter get into the pool and take some pictures? And her daughter was all up for it, and it was an experiment, and I wanted to try a nighttime photo shoot, and I had a point and shoot camera, and I was blown away by the effect. Being in pitch black, it was just, it had such a great end result. And it's still one of my most favorites. In terms of the photo shoots, but I've done a million photo shoots, and I've upgraded camera equipment. I've really invested in the series, because what I've seen underwater occur is a spectacular kaleidoscope of activity, and you get these beautiful geometric patterns with the flowers, or you get females that are weightless, and males too. I've done all sorts of interesting combinations of people, flowers. So I just love the effects of weightlessness underwater, the lightness, the transfer of light.
So tell me, both of your daughters are an artist. So do you think it's a talent also that they inherit through you, and or it was more like a playing, growing up with a mother who is an artist? What do you think? What had like a more impact on them choosing a career to being an artist?
Well, I think both things had a great effect. I do believe that we inherit certain abilities, and they can be enhanced or not. And I do see that they have natural tendencies towards maybe abstract thinking or proportion and size and color, and they can converse in these ways, and so they do have that natural tendency. They actually taught themselves to draw. They would play with crayons a lot, but I remember just all of a sudden one day they came up and look what I did, and learned on the computer. But they also all the while were watching what I was doing, and I think kids watch more than you think that they do, and that probably gave them an introduction. I never said to them, you should do this, you should do that, or take drawing lessons, but given the option, they always loved to do those kind of things.
So do you feel really good because actually you were a role model to your daughters? I mean, I'm sure they're very proud of you. They liked you watching their mom being an artist. I mean, otherwise they would choose working on the Wall Street.
I think that they are naturally inclined towards being artists. They have just a natural interest and instinct. I think the fact that I took so much joy in what I did, that maybe interested them. But Jim takes great joy in what he does. So I just think that it was their natural interest.
Talent. So tell me, do you think that artists in a certain period of time they make the same, not the same, but similar points? Like what we were talking about 60s, how almost everybody in the world, they had collective consciousness, so they were listening similar music, they were wearing similar clothes. So can you see that now in this time in the world? Can you see one thing that maybe all the artists, they're similar in one thing?
Like what's our collective conscience saying?
Yes.
I'd imagine that the environment is not only so critical in my world, my mind, and what's happening to it, but I believe that is our collective concern, and it is something very relevant and in the forefront of everybody's mind, that we're running out of time to correct the mistakes that we've made.
With
climate issues and destroying the environment.
So you're saying that for everybody in the world, or you can see that in the art world that people are...
Well, it's definitely in the art world. There's certainly a lot of political issues all over the place, but I do believe that is a consistent conscious effort for artists to address and show their concern
on the world level. And now in America, as your daughter, she's a plus size model, so it's a time in America also that Me Too movement, that sexism is not like in anymore, that women, all different sizes and shapes, also as men, are being recognized as a new normal. So that's what's happening right now in America. I don't know if it's happening in other parts of the world, but my feeling is always that biggest movement come from America. So can you see that also? Did that happen? Did that change, a social change, has an impact on the art world, or is it art world having that impact on a social change in America?
Well, I think they kind of go hand in hand, back and forth. Sometimes you get involved in movements you don't even know that you're in it. I think that my daughters are very self-empowered women. They speak their minds. They have this freedom to be who they want to be, and they're very vocal about that, and I'm proud of that they have that ambition to towards their authentic, beautiful selves. It depends on your influence, but I would say somehow within all of my art, I address all those issues one way or another. We're responding to our environment and putting it out there in what we see and what we do. Maybe not always so obviously, but it could be more covert.
Yeah, how I feel the art is always in many different forms had such a big importance on pushing society out of the comfortable zone. So I honestly think that's such a creative process, so that comes from different kind of art. So now, as I see this movement that's happening in America, it also has through fashion, through exhibitions, through movies, changing people's minds big time. Sometimes feels that we are a society in America, we are going too far. So what is your feeling about that?
Well, it's interesting. I like the question. I'm not naturally an antagonistic person that wants to challenge everybody in terms of their beliefs. I think I address what is important to me through more visual advocacy, kind of putting out there the things that I consider beautiful and important and letting people arrive at their own conclusions. So I use maybe art as a vehicle to express this sort of joy or appreciation or reverence, whereas I think other artists push people into uncomfortable zones. I mean, sometimes I'll address things that are dark or moody, but it's not an aggressive kind of argumentative type of approach.
So do you think because I know you privately as a person, I know that's how you are behaving towards the life. So that definitely tells one thing, your inner state actually through art is showing how you feel, right? So if someone is aggressive inside, I assume they're gonna make that type of right? If they're angry, they're gonna show, they're gonna express themselves through art. So tell me, what is the new project that you're working on?
Well, right now working for a really interesting hotel that I think we have very similar aesthetics on some pieces that are sculptural and 2D art pieces, and we'll see where that goes. But I also just did a 92-inch print of female underwater with a photo montage of birds overlaying that, where there's a lot of transfer of light and it's in somebody's stairwell. And I always feel like I get this wonderful connection when I work one-on-one with people, particularly in custom pieces, because I see what they feel in my art, and I like to respond to how that makes them feel, and it makes me feel more connected. And I feel like I really enjoy working with people in general, and it's a great synergy.
So tell me, is there like any place in the world that you feel the art scene is bigger? Is it, would you say like Santa Fe or New York or Tokyo? Is it like a comparing in your like world, what is the most important part of the world to be accepted and recognized as an artist? Or does it matter?
I don't know that it matters what anybody ever thinks about your art. If you love your art, it's, you know, that's the most important thing. But it's always nice to be recognized in a global audience. And I love what's happening in New York because I've always grown up around New York and enjoyed the energy of New York and what New Yorkers put out there and how they are so serious about whatever's happening in New York. They take great pride in being international stage. So I get a lot of energy from that. But I think that art is evolving wonderfully in many cities around the world, and certainly more accessible through the internet like never before. And you know, you just have to go to Instagram to quickly find great inspiration and find things that you would have never seen 15 years ago, because you would have had to know the specific galleries that were handling this type of work and go through a lot of channels that just don't exist anymore. So the accessibility is really interesting on a worldwide level.
I do need to ask you a question. What would you tell, which advice you would give to young artists? Because I'm going to ask you a question. What is the advice that you give to your daughters being a young artist? Did you
yeah, I do. I do have something that I've said over and over, which is be fearless in anything you do. Do it with tremendous energy and don't stop. A lot of people joke that I'm a dog with a bone. A friend of mine says this all the time, and with rose-colored glasses. But I believe that anything that's accomplished is usually done out of extremely hard work. And you can't get anywhere without being fearless and working hard. But I always felt like if I could give my kids something, it was the ability to be unafraid and don't worry about what anybody thinks of you. Just be your authentic self and be shameless. Enjoy who you are and put it out there. Just don't look back.
Thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you.